So it's definitely a tension between wanting customers to contact our contact center and get those questions answered from our, we call them the Kuru gurus. Like it's a great experience and our team is highly trained and we get incredible feedback from our customers about how awesome that team is. But we want as few of them to contact as possible. So it's always, how can we answer that question better, more strategically, more in your face, in a way that both gives you what you need, but also kind of forecloses the need or forestalls the need to reach out and touch someone to ask it in person.
At the beginning of a brand's life, there are a few SKUs, and the goal is to find product market fit. Once you graduate from the beginning stages of brand building, you start to grow a team, add SKUs, and in turn, you start to have different problems than when you first started out as a brand. How do you navigate this growth over a long period of time? I am not sure, but I brought in a seasoned professional to help you and me learn how to manage a big brand. Welcome to How to Market Your D2C Brand, a show where we interview founders and marketers in the D2C space to learn about how they have grown their brands and current best practices in marketing. This show is brought to you by Goodo Studios, a photo and video creation studio that works with consumer brands to make content that converts viewers into customers. And I'm your host, Matthew Gutozzi. Today's guest is Sean McGinnis, who recently was promoted to president of Kuru Footwear, but for a few years was the chief marketing officer of Kuru. I wanted to start off the interview by understanding how Kuru has defined itself as a shoe brand with competitors like Nike and Adidas in their space.
For Kuru in particular, we are a very highly specialized footwear brand, right? We don't perceive ourselves to be competing head on with all those companies, although we do, obviously. I mean, shoes are shoes, right? But we're specialized in the way that we are tackling both the marketing and our customer base. So we help people with foot pain. Our inventor and founder and CEO patented some technology about 12, 13 years ago that is embedded in every pair of shoes that we make. And so it's both a blessing and a curse. It creates really difficult targeting issues for us. One of the biggest issues really is foot pain can affect anybody. Can affect young folk like yourself. It can affect old fuddy-duddies like me. Certainly, the older you get, the more your feet tend to break down, and so that creates some issues. But genuinely, we're present in every single demographic across the country, and so it's a really difficult thing for us to target. But we really don't perceive ourselves to be competing directly and head on with all those performance shoe companies like a Nike or Adidas. Take your pick, right? There's hundreds and hundreds of them, but there's some really great kind of micro brands or even smaller brands that have specialized in such incredible ways. You know, take Allbirds, for example, or Vessi. I'd like to think of Kuru in that same breath with some of those brands. Are a little smaller than some, a little bigger than others potentially, but it's a fascinating space to be in. It really is.
So you talked about targeting can sometimes be hard. How did you guys start to formulate over the years what is your position within the shoe industry, right? So if you're not competing against the Nike, which is totally fine, you don't have to be this David and Goliath story. How did you find the positioning to create this kind of area or kind of niche within this bigger industry?
Yeah, the backstory is fascinating, and I'll give you my background. So I only joined the brand about 2.5 years ago in the midst of kind of a turnaround. And so I would say philosophically and at the kind of in an ideal way, we're still very much learning what that niche is and how our customers perceive us. I will say the kind of the way that we fell into this category was almost dumb luck. Our founder had no intention of starting a foot pain oriented brand, honestly. His he knew that he wanted to develop some intellectual property and to develop a patent or two that he could embed into the shoes. The initial kind of hypothesis that he had was, what happens if I take materials and shapes and sizes that are kind of typically in aftermarket shoe inserts and just build them right into the shoe? Like, why, if I buy $100 pair of running shoes, do I have to go buy a $75 pair of inserts to make them work for me? Air quote, right? And only when talking to customers after the initial round of kind of going to market, did he start to get feedback around, oh my gosh, this has really helped with this problem that I've had my entire life or these last 5 years or whatever. And actually for the first several years, he was he's like, oh, come on. Like, that's not, can't really be working that way. Kind of felt like it was a placebo effect in some ways. He started to hear it, then he started to market around that. Hey, we help with plantar fasciitis. And then he heard more and more of that feedback, right? And so he's like, it's just, customers are believing what I told them to believe, right? And here we are 13 years later, and we get this kind of feedback from customers every single day. Weekly, we sort of send around inside the team in our internal Slack kind of inspiration of the week. We just randomly pull a customer review from our Facebook page or from one of the product pages. It's amazing. It really does. It's life-changing stuff. I mean, imagine being in pain every single step you take. I'm standing here talking to you. If I had plantar fasciitis or other types of foot pain, I would be in pain for this entire interview. The ability to go about your day and do the things we all take for granted without pain is really quite amazing. And so it's the thing that keeps us going. It's the mission of the business. And it's really at the core of everything we do.
So for me, like from an outsider looking in, I perceive this as okay, it's a very science-based brand, right? So how has education and explaining your technology helped build your authority?
We have not gone to the lengths we intend to go to really validate medically what's happening. That's the reason why we don't promise that we can take away your foot pain. What we like to say is that our technology puts your body in a position to take care of itself. We think that's a much more accurate statement. Um, and what we do is we really, from a storytelling perspective, there's definitely a component where we do believe a fair number of customers um, go to our technology page, read all about the patents, read all about the innovation and the history of this. Um, and yet there's a whole different cohort that probably doesn't care. I've sort of joked with our CEO, like, hey, if I can get us to your growth targets over the next 10 years and nobody knows about the technology and how we actually do what we do you really care? I think that's kind of that marketing balance of like, where in the customer journey do you insert that? There's definitely going to be a cohort of folks who want to understand, who really are not going to be conveyed or swayed that you can actually help. Because frankly, so many of them have tried so many other things. It's just painful. And so you start to give up. You start to give up hope. And for those folks, we definitely want to be able to tell that story. And we've been thinking quite creatively about new ways to tell that story. And I'm excited to start bringing some of that to the market. But yeah, today it's kind of a mix. We've got our technology page there. There's an animated graphic that kind of shows the way our technology cradles the heel of the human foot. There's some ways that the steps that we take as we build all of our shoes that run counter to the way most shoes are made in this country and abroad. And so we want to start telling that story as well, right? It's the way we go about it is harder and more expensive. And frankly, our factory partners don't really enjoy it because it makes it harder for them to build what we ask. But it really is about forming the shoe around the natural shape of the human foot. Most people don't know this, but most other sneakers and every shoe is made with it's built around a last, right? There's a shape that's kind of formed like a human foot. Most lasts are flat on the bottom, and your foot is not flat on the bottom. So our lasts are not flat on the bottom. We have rounded, contoured bottoms in our lasts, and it makes it really difficult because the form wants to rock back and forth as you're going about this, the building of the shoes. And so it just makes it more expensive for us, but we think it's the right thing to do.
As Kuru has grown, so has the amount of SKUs. I wanted to know how the team thinks about which SKUs to market and how to organize all of this content for the brand.
From a line management perspective, we've actually discontinued about 5 different styles since I've arrived. And the discontinuation process has been a pretty data driven exercise. So we focus on the things that aren't selling at the rate that we'd like them to, or that maybe the margin's not as good because they're just more expensive to make, or that they're returned at a higher rate. Making certain types of shoes in a way that fit right out of the box is more difficult, as you'd imagine, right? Sneakers where there's lots of flexibility, you can kind of tie them off at the top, and the top of the vamp, there's some flexibility there, or there's a knit upper. Those types of things are easier to fit to various different shapes of human feet. The one thing about making shoes is like there's no universal sizing. You really need to kind of standardize your sizing across your brand and your product line. And so that's another thing that we've been working really hard on. So in terms of pruning the line, there's that. In terms of looking for where to expand, we certainly monitor trends. We talk to our customers. We ask them in detailed ways about how they're using our current shoes. We use a product development framework and kind of a marketing framework called jobs to be done methodology. So we really want to understand pretty deeply, this is the customer profile that's using this specific shoe for this specific thing. And we want to know if you're using it in a way that's almost kind of off label usage. I'll give you probably the best example. We launched a new women's slip-on that's very lightweight and mesh with a mesh upper about 20 March or April of 2020, and it took off like a rocket. Sales were through the roof. Very comfortable shoe. It's my sister's actually favorite pair of shoes of ours. She wears it every day. And through some customer interviews, we found out that there were a lot of women, especially in the middle of the pandemic, that were wearing that as kind of like a house shoe. Instead of a pair of slippers, it was the most comfortable thing they could put on, go to work, maybe run a couple errands. You kind of have that flexibility to wear it in the house or outside the house. That was a key takeaway for us to really understand, like, what is this specific shoe being used for? We didn't build it for that. We built it because it was super cute and following some trends and very flexible and lightweight and just very comfortable. And to learn that, drove us into some really interesting meetings internally. On the marketing side, it's a little bit different as well. So we do tend to follow certain seasonality. So as you'd imagine, sandals come into season in late February, early March. We're marketing those then. Boots come in the fall. So there's kind of counter cyclicality around those two specific style types. And then we just kind of make sure that things are getting hit. Well, a lot of what we're marketing in a variety of our channels, I think of it as kind of, how would I want to communicate with my best friend if they were a big fan of the brand? We want to alert them of any change in status. If something's being discontinued, we want you to know that, so you can come grab a pair if it's your favorite pair. If we're launching a new colorway, we certainly want to promote the fact that, hey, this is a new colorway. Another good example, we just launched the women's Atom as our best-selling style. We just launched that in wide. So we made that a big push to make sure that everyone who bought Atoms now knows that they're available in wide. And anyone who bought women's wides from other styles, they now know that our best-selling Atom is also available in wide. So it's a pretty consistent push around that kind of a framework. The one big question that I had coming into the business was, like, if we promote specific colorways or specific styles or specific SKUs, do we really have the ability to move the needle? On the way in the door, my question was like, I'm not so sure. Like, the thought was, Matt's got foot pain. Matt's going to find us through a referral or through a Google search. Matt's going to find our website, search around a little bit to prove to himself, like, this might or might not be something I actually believe can help me. Once you get that mental state, you're just going to shop the catalog, right? You're going to look and see, do I like these styles? Do I like this price point? Do I like those colors? And you're going to buy what you like. That's the way I behave most times. But I will say, there's definitely an ability to move the needle by moving or by promoting certain colors or certain styles, undoubtedly. And those things that tend to be a little bit more kind of poppy color are the things that we tend to focus on, which creates some pain point inside the marketing team, frankly, because a lot of those we treat as limited editions. So we do them as a one-time buy and then they go away. So now we're shooting all this image photography to go promote this stuff, and we have to remember when to pull it down. Because one of the things that our customers get really frustrated about is like, oh, I saw that color on Facebook and I came here to buy it and it's sold out. Like, why are you guys promoting that? That makes no sense at all. And they're right. And so it's been really difficult for us to manage that, to your point, with as many SKUs as we have.
Lots of brands say they are talking to their customers, but that can mean a lot of different things. For Kuru, I wanted to know how they are talking to customers and storing all that data to use internally.
We ask them probably too many things too often, to be frank. We send a net promoter score survey post-purchase, 21 days. We send customer review solicitation emails on a number of occasions. We're pulling people into in-person interviews and kind of roundtables and focus groups. We're running a jobs to be done persona development project right now in Q1, where we're talking to 50 to 100 of our best customers, some great customers, some who bought just once and never returned, trying to understand, like, what are the main drivers there. So it's very kind of, I don't want to say disjointed, but it's not as kind of thematically or consistent as we'd like it to be. It's one of the main drivers why we hired a brand director last year. So we found someone who's classically trained in the kind of the art of big CPG brand management, someone who really is going to go out, understand our customer base and what they're doing, using data, using available data, but also creating some data internal to the business. His primary role is really to understand that customer, drive those consumer insights, and then from those formulate brand strategy, product strategy, and marketing strategy. So he's only been with us a couple months, and he's kind of spinning up that knowledge base and really spinning up that system that we will rely on a go forward basis. But it was a great hire. Took a long time to find the right person for Kuru for that role, and I'm really glad we did.
Hiring a team is really important. And I think that's something as an executive you've done such a great job of. Could you kind of speak from your experience? How do you actually hire? How do you scale this team?
Yeah, boy, that's a huge topic. I feel like I could talk for hours just on that answer, one answer alone. It really does depend on the kind of the developmental cycle of the business, right? So the evolution, the maturity. If you're a new founder and you're a solopreneur and you're looking to hire your first person, the biggest question you should probably be asking yourself is, what are the things I hate doing? What are the things that I'm not uniquely gifted at? And what are the things that I need to keep doing to drive the business forward? And what are the things I can delegate to someone else? Whether that's the operational side or the financial side, or maybe it is the marketing side. In my experience, I tend to run into folks that are pretty gifted marketers at heart, and that's how they've grown the business to a certain point. And it's actually kind of the letting go of that marketing function is a little bit difficult for them. When we're hiring, or in terms of the specific process, um, to me, the it's not always the case. Sometimes you find people that are on the market, but the a lot of times the best hires come from what they call passive sourcing, right? So people that are not on the market, they're very happily employed. They're doing a great job at their current company. And so a lot of the work that I put in behind the scenes is kind of as a sales guy, honestly. I've built sizable teams of up to 30 plus people in 2 or 3 different places in the past, primarily built out through connecting on LinkedIn, and in that LinkedIn invitation, just being super transparent about why I'm reaching out. Hey, I'm building a paid search team at Sears. Would love to talk to you about it. And taking objections off the table, even in that initial reach out. When I was doing that back at Sears about a decade ago, I knew a lot of people wouldn't want to commute out into the suburbs or their home office. I was like, oh, and if in fact we're building a corporate office downtown here to house this team, it manages significant in the millions of dollars, mid 8-figure budget with Google and Bing. It's best. We're going to build a best-in-class data team to support it. To support that, kind of thinking about why would people say no, and kind of including that actually, whatever way you're planning to overcome that objection in the initial contact message on LinkedIn, and gaining lots of calls. Getting Zoom meetings built out of like, here's what that looks like. In terms of the process, what I typically do is I will spend, and almost everyone I've hired can sort of vouch for this in the last year. The initial meeting is about me selling Kuru. I spend a lot of time like, here, this is a company you've probably never heard of because we're pretty small. And here's everything I think if I were in your shoes, I would want to know. So I disclose a lot of information about like the history, kind of where we're at, where we're going, the vision, the little bit about the culture, and things of that nature. The second meeting can also typically be by Zoom, and that's where I'm asking you to more sell yourself to me. I'll dig into traditional interview questions built around mostly culture. So we interview pretty hard around our 5 corporate values to make sure that it's a good fit and that you're going to enjoy being here with us. And then, depending on the team, I'll do one final interview, usually in person, to bring you in to meet with maybe 1 or 2 interviews. Sometimes the hiring manager or the team that you'll work and support, and maybe another team. So, for example, I just hired a new director of customer experience. That person is really critical for us, and so he met with kind of the 3 or 4 major leaders inside the business, as well as the 2 people he would manage. Moved really quickly and got him hired and onboarded. Great hire. Can't wait to see what he does to take our customer experience team to the next level. And every single time I hire, even if we have lost an incredible performer, I always view it as a potential opportunity to upgrade the talent pool. So just being an eternal optimist, I think that's kind of the way I tend to operate. And so even in that circumstance where we had a guy who was just a killer and had been with us for 6 years, and it was a real bummer to lose him, it's like, okay, we're going to go out and find the best possible candidate we can, and hope that we upgrade the talent pool in the team, take us in a new direction.
With so many SKUs, you go on, you're like, okay, where do I start? Where do I begin? How are you helping customers find the right pair of shoes? Because it is online. And how have you developed that customer experience?
As I mentioned, that team member built out our entire system. So we're a big fan of Gladly, and migrated from Zendesk over to Gladly. It's been a great boon for us in terms of productivity. And that team, we've got 15 or so customer experience front facing team members right now, covering every channel from chat, SMS, email, and phone. as well as kind of social. They're kind of highly trained to answer customers' questions about, hey, I've got this specific use case. The one area where we have been brainstorming lately is it would be really an interesting test to run kind of a front end quiz. Like click here to check out our shoe finder quiz to, ask you 5 or 6 questions and dump you into a quick landing page that gives you to the top 2 or 3 things that might solve your problems. So a lot of it's around kind of use case, like what are you going to use it for? Some of it can be around kind of career, nurses and retail workers that might have different needs from a waterproofness or a non-slip surface will get funneled into a specific shoe type that we have. But it really is kind of about like, how are you planning to use this, and what foot pain are you trying to solve? Because every pair of our shoes has the technology, the Kuru sole embedded in it. By and large, every pair of shoes we make is good for stuff like plantar fasciitis. But people will ask like, well, what's the most comfortable, or what's the most lightweight, or which one has the most room in the toe box? And we can definitely guide customers in that way when we get a chance to ask those questions. So it's definitely a tension between wanting customers to contact our contact center and get those questions answered from our, we call them the Kuru gurus. Like it's a great experience, and our team is highly trained, and we get incredible feedback from our customers about how awesome that team is. But we want as few of them to contact as possible. So it's always, how can we answer that question better, more strategically, more in your face, in a way that both gives you what you need, but also kind of forecloses the need or forestalls the need to reach out and touch someone to ask it in person.
How important is customer experience to the marketing and the buying journeys of the customer?
We look at every customer touch point as an opportunity to enhance our brand values and talk about the mission of the business. And the customer experience touch points are no different. They're definitely a big part of that. Every time we've got you on the phone, we offer to place the order for you. If you prefer to go back online and close it, that's fine too. We do not measure, and will never measure, kind of sales KPIs. We don't want to turn this into a sales driven organization. We believe in world-class anticipatory customer experience. We want to understand the needs of every single person that's contacting us as quickly as we can and get them the information they need so that they can kind of get on with their day. If they'd rather chat, hang out, we're not going to measure average handle time and try and, knuckle down and, oh my gosh, your handle time is so awful. Like we're not going to give you a ton of feedback on that, especially if it's just a couple of use cases. If you're driving it and you're a talker, maybe there's a little bit of coaching to kind of get you as a customer experience person to kind of move the ball forward a little bit more quickly. But we just want to treat every customer the way we would want to be treated. It's a really simple kind of golden rule approach that we have at Kuru.
Part of Kuru is there is a return policy. There's logistics and returns, and it can be very complicated within retail and clothing specifically. So how do you leverage this return policy within your marketing and kind of just customer experience in general?
Big part of everything that we're trying to communicate. I keep joking with the team that e-commerce doesn't have to be hard. I mean, this is not rocket science, right? Like, think about the questions that you would have and that you have every time that you shop online, and communicate clearly and in the right location what that policy is. And our shipping policy is a really good example. That information was on the site on our shipping page. It was on PDP somewhere about midway down the PDP. And I asked our ecom team, like, hey, let's put a shipping bar below the main nav. And so we tested it real quickly. You see it there today. It says free shipping, free returns, free exchanges. That's the policy. So it's if you're buying in the States, that's the policy. Let me clarify. So we do have an IP sniffer that's built in, that if you're coming from Canada, we give you a different message that kind of resonates with the policy from a Canadian perspective, because it's not free shipping and not free returns when we're shipping internationally. That drove about a 20% increase in our conversion rate, just being super in your face and very clear and very persistent about the fact that it was, and it's still not, I don't think, as aggressive as I'd like it to be. So we've got some tests that we plan to run around kind of the PDP area itself with the buy button. And right below that's another place to echo that. But echoing it very cleanly and in a way that is not too cute. Like that, where I see ecom brands kind of suffer is when they get a little too cute. I'm famous for saying here, like, that's just too cute by half. Like there's certain marketing messages. Like, we want to be super, super transparent and very clear in the way that we communicate with our customers. What's the value proposition? My CEO's kind of fond of my other saying of, like, I want every single person that arrives on our website, I want to slap them in the face with a wet fish and scream, like, we solve foot pain. You can't bury that message somewhere. And so we're constantly testing and trying to refine, like, what is that messaging that is really going to resonate with our customers? What is the category that we play in? It's not performance sneakers or performance shoes, as we mentioned. Like, what is it? I think of it as kind of stylish shoes for foot pain, because a lot of folks kind of have foot pain shoes, but they don't look like they're very stylish. They look like they're foot pain shoes. Like we joke internally that we're kind of like the non-orthopedic orthopedic shoe brand, like they don't look orthopedic, right? Like most of them anyway. One or two that are kind of like, ooh, that's kind of, looks like Frankenstein could be wearing those on the set at Universal Studios. I'm not so sure. But most of them are pretty darn stylish, pairs of shoes. And they have our technology built in every single pair. And so even though they still look like, my sister said to me one time, she's like, I'm 52 and I'm not willing to give up on looking cute yet. It's like that's the perfect customer for us, probably. And folks that still matter, that style and fashion matters to them. We're not purely a fashion brand, and we're not purely a performance brand. We're kind of in this world where we're straddling both worlds. So we need to make sure we're building really great product that customers want to buy, and make sure that we're enhancing and innovating on that technology to solve as much foot pain as possible.
So you just are promoted to president of the company. I'd love to hear what can we expect from Kuru now that you've been promoted to president? What should we see in the future from you guys?
Well, I like to think it's more of the same. We've been growing pretty dramatically the last couple of years. The turnaround is definitely complete at this point. We're going to continue to look for new styles that we can introduce that our customers will love. We're going to continue to innovate on our patented technology. That's definitely in the roadmap. And putting me in this role will free our CEO up and founder up to go and spend some more time in the lab where he loves to be. He's a tinkerer and just a mastermind. Like, he thinks so strategically on a forward-looking basis about where he wants us to be. And the other part of the playbook that I'm really passionate about is getting us into owned and operated retail, honestly. So we're still a ways off, probably 2 years out from opening up our first kind of flagship store. But I could absolutely see putting some budget in for next year's budget to start spending money to hopefully have our first store launched in 2024 sometime. There's always a tension for us in terms of wanting to grow as fast as possible with as few SKUs as possible and as few channels as possible. And the other thing you'll probably see from us is more kind of a broad-based awareness marketing, advertising. What form that takes specifically, we're still in the process of testing that out this year, but I could absolutely see us doing TV or radio or billboards or all of the above to try to change the overall dynamic of the way our marketing ecosystem works. We've got things pretty well dialed in at this point in terms of how things work within the plit spaces that we're playing. And we're looking to potentially introduce a new variable that will turbocharge things or just change the dynamic significantly. So that's definitely an area of interest for us.
So to finish off the whole interview, we do quick fire questions. The first one is, what is one tech company in the e-commerce space that you've been a fan of lately?
I'm really excited to see what Rockerbox brings to the table for us. So Rockerbox is a fractional attribution and data analytics platform and technology. We're in the process of spinning that up. It's been gathering data for the last couple of weeks. And over the next quarter, I'm pretty convinced it's going to get us a lot more clarity on what channels and what specific things inside those channels are working, and the way that our marketing channels kind of interplay with each other. So really excited to see where that happens.
What's a D2C brand that you think is awesome?
Man, there's two right now that I'm a big fan of. I love Beard Brand. The stuff that Eric's done over there is incredible. And every Q4, I kind of grew out the full beard, so I get a little bit more passionate about his products. I bought a beard softener lately, and then kind of when we get back to Q1, I take it back. It's like, okay, spring's coming. Not brave enough in the heat of the high desert here in Salt Lake City to carry a full beard throughout the summer, but maybe someday. And then the other one is Fresh Clean Tees. Man, they have the best t-shirts. And being a tall guy like I am, buying talls from them, I'm just kind of champing at the bit, waiting for them to launch a tall version of their long sleeve t-shirt, because I'll buy a dozen of those probably.
I finish out the podcast with a segment called Open Mic. This is a chance for my guests to share anything that they want. A lot of times I feel like people get stuck behind the industry they are in, but we are all human and have other interests outside of that. So this is a space for my guests to say whatever they want to say.
Well, thanks, Matt. There's this debate going on lately in the marketing community, especially in the Twitter sphere, around whether one should pay more attention to channel-driven ROAS or whether one should pay more attention to MER, or a marketing efficiency ratio. And I'm here to tell you, you need both, quite frankly. At my level, and as I was kind of engineering a good bit of the turnaround here at Kuru Footwear, we used MER. We internally call it ad ratio. I look at total spend in the marketing channels over net revenue. We kind of make some assumptions about our return rate and ensure that we're efficient. And what that really is, it's just a proxy for a P&L, right? We're making sure that we're spending at a level that maintains profitability for us. And that's important. We are not the type of brand, these DTC darlings that I keep calling them, the folks that have all gone public or SPAC'd their way into the public mindset, or just, they were early innovators, many of whom are losing lots and lots of money, millions and millions of dollars annually. And they're great brands, but we prefer to run the business in a different way. We are a bootstrapped company that's growing aggressively, and we do so in a way that is responsible and that drives profit to the bottom line. And MER will never give you a view of what's happening inside your channels, right? So it's important to be data-driven enough and data-centric enough to look at both and understand what they really, really mean. I think ROAS in a vacuum is dangerous. And I think MER in a vacuum is dangerous. I think you have to I kind of look at all of our channels. If you think about all the different marketing channels where you play in the space, I'm thinking about it like an equalizer effectively, right? I want this beautiful music to come out through the speakers, and I want to play and tinker and twist dials just a little bit here and there without overcorrecting to make sure that the output through those speakers is incredibly beautiful. And you have to be thinking about all of that. And the last kind of that gated filter before things get to the speakers is your MER. Like, is it going to sound beautiful? You'll know whether it's going to sound beautiful or not based on your MER, but you have to look at the full funnel performance of every single marketing channel that you're playing in to really understand how they interact and how they interplay and whether you're going to get that desired outcome in the end.
This conversation with Sean helped me understand not only how to scale a brand, but also manage lots of teams and SKUs to succeed as a bigger brand. You can follow Sean on Twitter at Sean McGinnis, and we're also going to be putting a lot more information about Sean and Kuru in the show notes. Thank you, Sean, for being on the show. If you like this show, drop a rating on Apple Podcasts or your podcast listening app. And if you really love this show, hey, please share this episode with a friend, and thank you in advance.